Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining me on my podcast, Mahan Health with Dr. Hanisha. Mahan literally translates to great in Sanskrit, and it just doesn't make sense to have anything but the absolute best when it comes to your health. This podcast is all about how you can achieve Mahan or great health. My goal is by you listening or watching this podcast, you're getting just a little bit closer to achieving Mahan or great health yourself. This podcast is all for you, so please make sure to comment what you'd like to learn more about so I can get a guest on the show who's an expert in that field, or hey, I might even talk about it myself. Well, today's episode is about one of my absolute favorite topics, hormones. Specifically female hormones. Don't worry, gentlemen, we'll be talking about male hormones on the next episode. But, gentlemen, before you tune out completely, remember this is important information for you to know as well. Well, today we talk about the key reproductive hormones like estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, how the menstrual cycle actually works, PMS symptoms, and if they're really something we have to deal with, and so much more. So who's my guest for today? Well, today's episode, I had the opportunity to interview one of my best friends and colleagues who is an expert in women's health. Dr. Noelani Rodriguez is a naturopathic doctor who loves helping women feel their best by treating conditions such as peri-menopause, digestive health, weight loss, fertility, thyroid conditions, and low energy or brain fog. She believes that women are the future, and by optimizing women's health, we are optimizing the health of future generations, leading to a better world. She practices in both Encinitas and Palm Springs, both in California, at a clinic called Pure Health. So make sure to check her out on Instagram and on their website afterward. All right. Well, please leave comments below on what you thought of this episode so that we know how we can improve and what you're really enjoying. All right, I won't hold you all up anymore, and I hope you enjoy the show. Hi, Dr. Rodriguez. Thank you so much for joining me on my show today. I really appreciate having you.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be on your show. I think what you're doing is great and just really getting the word out there from the viewpoint of naturopathic doctors.
Yes, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Okay, so let's get right into the interview. What, so I ask every single one of my guests this about their story, what brought them to natural medicine, what brought them to naturopathic medicine, because I feel like our stories are really what define us and shape us. So tell us your story. What's your story and how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, my whole life was a very active person and really, I think in the beginning took my body for granted because I was so healthy. I never really went through any serious health issues. But then when I got to college, I decided to study food science and human nutrition. And it was in my third and fourth year of college that I really started to learn about type 2 diabetes and how big of an epidemic it is and how we could treat this type of disease with nutrition and exercise. But I knew there was so much more to health than just nutrition and exercise, and it was crazy how big this epidemic was. And it just led me down a rabbit hole of wanting to learn more about the physiology of the body, more about how just the body functions when it's in disease and how to optimize it. And that's really what led me to naturopathic medicine and Bastyr University. And that's how I got into all of this.
Yes, that's amazing. What brought your interest towards women's health? Because you were just talking about diabetes and that's how you got involved, but now you do mostly women's health, right? And so what got you into that?
Yeah, definitely. I think just being, first off, a woman.
Right.
I think we live in a day and age and in a country where being a woman is like so empowering, so awesome. It's a time when we can do anything, we can be anything, we can conquer anything. So I'm just really supportive of women getting out there and going after they want and getting everything that they want. And so having that strong support for women really just made me want to help women live their life most optimally. Being a mom or starting a business or going to medical school, these are all really taxing things. And if our body is not up to the task, then that can really hold us back from being all these great things, doing all these great things. So, yeah. And then I started learning about all the hormones and I was experiencing some of those imbalances. And that's really just took me down a path of women's health. And I've really loved it ever since.
Yeah, definitely. So I really like that, like helping them live optimally so that they can live the life they desire. That's a
Yeah,
big part of what Mahan Health is all about. So I really like that.
that's why we're friends.
Yes, exactly. I know. These are conversations we just have on the regular, like our weekly conversations.
Women supporting women, definitely.
Exactly. I love it. And I think, like you said, like it's a big part of like we live in a world where we have been taught that women can do anything, and that can be exhausting at times. And so it's so great because we have that ability to do it now, but then it can be
Mhm.
exhausting. And then if we don't have the means and we're not properly taking care of ourselves, then it could lead to a negative path, which is what we're
Oh
trying to
yeah.
avoid. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
great.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's get right into talking about hormones then. I love this topic so much, and I know so many of our listeners are all about hormones, and they impact us in every which way of our lives, right? So let's talk about hormones. So what? Start from the basics. What are some of the key reproductive hormones for women, and what are their functions?
Yeah, the three key ones that I think most women know of already would be estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. But I want to take it a step back, I think, and just kind of start from the brain because that's really where it starts. And that's the hormones that are secreted from your brain are what tell your ovaries to do. And so let's start there, I think would be better. The two main ones, there's tons of hormone signals that come from your brain, the pituitary gland, but the two main ones I would say are follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, so FSH and LH. FSH, as it sounds, follicle stimulating, is what stimulates the body to mature a follicle in the ovaries. And then LH, luteinizing hormone, is just a quick hormone that's secreted in high amounts at the time of ovulation. And this is what triggers ovulation to happen. But these two main hormones are really what help control the ovaries to do their job, and then thus give us the estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone our body needs. So estrogen is, I mean, there's so many benefits to estrogen. It's most notably what we know it's for is for helping the body to build up that uterine lining. So it's in higher amounts in the first half of the cycle, and then
Could
in
you
lower
real
amounts.
quick explain what the uterine lining is for those
Yeah,
who may not be aware of that?
definitely. So the uterine lining is well, it's the uterine lining. So the uterus is where a
Yeah.
baby will develop, and it's located in the lower abdomen area, and it's right between, it's by your bladder. So when you are pregnant and have a baby growing in there, it can push on your bladder. So it's around that area, lower abdomen area.
Mhm. Okay. Sorry, continue.
Yes, back to estrogen. So
Yes.
yeah, I was just saying that apart from developing the uterine lining, which is a huge part of um, women's health, is it also, I mean, there's so many benefits to estrogen: bone health, brain health, heart health, your blood vessels, cholesterol. It affects all of these things. And I mean, that's why I'm so passionate about balancing women's hormones in every stage of their life, because it's not just about having a baby. There's so many other health benefits to estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. And then, okay, so next is progesterone. Progesterone is the calming hormone, and it's also what helps in the second half of your cycle to help maintain that uterine lining that has been built up over the first half of your cycle. So we see it really elevate after you have ovulated an egg, which is around day 14 of your cycle.
Okay.
And then testosterone is the main one. We cannot forget that one. This is what gives women their confidence, their motivation, their drive. It increases their libido. It helps us maintain muscle mass, which can in turn increase metabolism. So cannot forget about testosterone.
Definitely. And I'm glad you brought that up because I feel like a lot of times people do forget about that.
Yeah.
And it's an absolutely crucial hormone in women's health as well as men's health.
Right, definitely. It's
Yeah.
more heard about in men's health and not really focused on in women's health. You're right.
Right.
And we need it too, not in
Yeah.
as high amounts as men, but we need some.
Yeah, we definitely need some as well. So when So I'm glad you brought up that ovulation is usually around day 14, and that's a part of our hormonal cycle. So could you actually go into a little bit more about how the menstrual cycle works? I ask this because I've talked to so many women, young and old, who have no idea how their menstrual cycle works. They don't even know when they're ovulating.
Absolutely.
Right. And so could you explain a little bit? Because I think this, I mean, I have so many opinions on this, but I definitely feel like this is something that we should be taught before we even start our cycle, so that we're ready for this and we understand our body and the way that it works, right?
Yes, you are so right. I mean, I don't think I knew about my menstrual cycle and what time hormones were doing what until I got to medical school, and we had to learn it, and that was what, maybe our second year. So you're so right that it's something that needs to be talked about more. So there's a lot to it, but we'll just try and go over the basics.
Yeah.
So I mean, one of the
Explain it
most,
as well as you can without a diagram. Like, I feel like I don't know
I
really.
know, we should be pointing to
Yeah,
something,
I
but
feel like that's
so I think a great place to start is what day one is. A lot of women are confused about what day one is. And day one is actually the day your period starts. So when you start having a period is when the clock starts over. And so that is day one. And then around day 5, so your period is usually weaning off, it's getting lighter. Some women are already done with their period by then, but around day 5, I mean, and we're talking about a typical 28-day cycle, which not every woman has 28-day cycles. It can range, but let's for ease, we'll do a 28-day cycle. So day 5 is when your estrogen levels start to increase. And again, as we talked about, estrogen is what builds that uterine lining up. And we need this uterine lining to build up in order to be thick enough and have enough nutrients to sustain an implantation of a fertilized egg. And so really having sufficient amount of estrogen to build that uterine lining up is necessary. And then on day 14 is when you have is your ovulation, and that's that spike in luteinizing hormone, LH. And then from there on, day 15 to 28 is usually higher levels of progesterone. The estrogen is being secreted still, but most notably is the progesterone. And this is what's helping to maintain that uterine lining for if and or when an egg that is fertilized implants into that uterine lining. It needs to be thick enough, it needs to have enough nutrients, it has to have enough blood vessels to like I said, sustain an implantation of a fertilized egg.
Yeah, to essentially protect that egg so that it can survive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then if there is no implantation, then on day 28, around there, your body's levels of progesterone drop off. And that's significant because that drop off in progesterone is what causes your body to shed that uterine lining. So every month you want a new uterine lining to build up because it's healthy. Just like our skin sheds off regularly, we want new uterine linings of cells, new healthy cells to come back. So getting rid of that old lining and preparing for another new cycle to start is what is the progesterone drop off is doing. And
Okay.
that's a cycle.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, it's it can seem a little daunting, a little complicated, I feel, but really, I mean, do you have any recommendations for ways women can track their cycles or really understand it a little bit better? Do you have any resources that you like?
One I really like is Clue. It's a free app.
Yeah.
And I think it's great. It gives you lots of options for, did you have cramps or PMS symptoms? And you can mark that. It automatically updates when you start your period. So, and then over time, it tells you how long your cycles have been. And you can really see, just like what is the trend in your cycles? Are they always 28 days? Are they 24 days? Are they 32 days? And then it gives you a range of when you should be ovulating based on that 28-day cycle. So around day 14 is when it'll show ovulation, and then the window that is potentially when you can get pregnant, before the ovulation and after the ovulation, it has this little window. I think that's great. I mean, there's other things like ovulation sticks that you can pee on and stuff like that. There's basal body temperature, but this is just the easiest way to track, but not the safest if you're looking for birth control.
Right. Well, speaking of birth control, actually, could you explain a little bit how birth control works in our body compared to the natural way of our hormones?
Yeah, so taking something like oral contraceptives, I mean, there's so many forms of birth control, but we'll
Right.
talk about the most common one, oral contraceptives, the pill. It actually lowers your body's amounts of hormones that you're producing itself. Endogenous is what they're called when your body produces it. And and that's because you're giving your body what we call exogenous, so outside coming in, sources of estrogen and progesterone. And so when you give your body these exogenous hormones, it suppresses your body's own production of them. And I mean, that's why it really helps women with things like heavy menstrual cycles or having acne or migraines during their cycle, breast tenderness, all these symptoms is because it's stopping your production and giving you this synthetic, regulated, same amount on the same day, I mean, same time every day. And so um, it works, but it's not getting to the root cause of, why are you having those symptoms in the first place?
Right. Yeah. And that's like a whole nother episode that we would have to go into. So so we won't
Yes.
get into all of that right now. I just wanted a little bit of background on birth control and kind of like a little preview for when we do actually go into it in more detail. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Hmm.
So how my next question is how do your hormones for or female hormones change around puberty, around pregnancy and menopause? I know that's a lot of things, but, but like what are normal changes in hormones looking like around those times?
Very different times, very
Yeah,
different hormone levels. I mean, this is what's so amazing about women's bodies too.
yeah,
And so pre-puberty, all your sex hormones are lower. They're not non-existent because you are a growing human. But really, when you hit that puberty mark is when you really get that surge of sex hormones. So we're talking about estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. And this is what helps, women start to develop breasts. They may even have some breast tenderness if they're having higher levels of estrogen. This can be when acne starts, they start growing pubic hair, and then it can be the start of menarche too, which is your first period. And it's really just signifying that, I mean, you're too young to be having a baby, but the body is ready and capable of having a baby at this point. But at no means should women be having babies at age 12 or 13.
right,
So
right, yeah. It's just a transitional period.
yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
yeah,
And then
okay,
pregnancy, we see hormones go all over the place. I mean,
yeah,
pregnancy being an egg is fertilized by sperm after it's ovulated. And when this happens, when the egg comes together with the sperm after a couple days, you start producing what's called HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin. And this is secreted from cells in the egg and sperm called trophoblasts. And this is actually what's measured on most pregnancy tests. So higher levels of HCG produced by this fertilized egg is what they're testing in your urine in most tests. And this amount of HCG is what tells we're getting all scientifics here, the
that's
corpus
okay.
luteum, which is actually the outer lining that the egg ruptured from in your ovary. It's in your ovary. The HCG, high levels of HCG, tell the corpus luteum to continue producing that progesterone and estrogen. And that's where we see that progesterone doesn't fall off and you have a period. It stays continuing to produce. And this HCG will stay elevated through your first trimester until the placenta can actually take over and the ovaries can take a break from producing all that progesterone and estrogen. But if you do not get pregnant, then there's no HCG being produced,
Right.
and thus the corpus luteum dies, and then the levels of progesterone drop off. So that's what we see in pregnancy.
Yeah.
And then in menopause, which is brought on by being in peri-menopause, which can happen. So menopause is usually around ages 50 to 52, most commonly, but peri-menopause can happen plus or minus 10 years from those year, from 51, let's say. And this is a sign just that your ovarian reserve, the amount of eggs in your ovaries is starting to go down, and your ovaries are starting to produce less estrogen and less progesterone. So then that signal coming from your brain, the FSH and the LH, become stronger. Your brain starts telling your ovaries, hey, why are you not producing estrogen and progesterone? Produce more. Here's a stronger signal, produce more. And in that way, that FSH and LH signals are really great indicators of menopause. So when those signals get stronger, I mean, apart from also seeing that the production of estrogen levels are lower, then you can see that women is entering perimenopause, is in menopause already. So they're great markers as well.
Okay, great. That was a really good explanation of all, like a really good brief explanation of those three big points in every woman's life.
Yeah,
And so,
milestones,
yeah,
really.
what?
Milestones, really.
Yeah, exactly. Huge milestones, and I really appreciate that. And um, I feel like we could go into how that energetically changes us as well, but I'll hold off on that today. We'll go into it another day, when we go into more detail on those. But that was really helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so so we got into some like the main milestones, like what's normal, what's normally occurring in a normal physiologically homeostatic body, right?
Mm-hmm.
What has commonly been occurring in my practice, your practice, all over, at least this country, from what I know, is a lot of women are experiencing estrogen dominance and progesterone deficiency. And so with that said, what are some common symptoms that if a woman is listening to this right now, she could be like, oh wait, that might be something that I need to get assessed by a naturopathic doctor or a functional
Mm-hmm.
medicine doctor.
Yeah, I think all of the common PMS symptoms that a lot of women in our country, like you're saying, they think that just every month this is what they experience. It's going to they're going to have severe cramps, or they're going to get a migraine, or they're going to have to take ibuprofen. They think that it's just part of life every month, but really it's not. And so that's one of the things that I want to change about our culture is realizing that it's not just normal and for you to have debilitating symptoms. But some of those symptoms can include, heavy or irregular menstrual cycles or short menstrual cycles. They can have tender or swollen breasts, acne around that time, weight gain, mood swings, saying that they're irritable or depressed, hair loss, migraines. There's so many different things, insomnia. So, and two, also, I want to break it down into two separate categories: estrogen dominance and progesterone deficiency, because knowing the difference helps us as doctors, I'm sure you can attest to this, realize, okay, which hormone we think is higher or lower. So estrogen dominance can be, as we know, estrogen in the first half of the cycle should be higher, but you can have estrogen that's above the normal range. There is a range that estrogen should be in, and if you're above it, then you overtly have too much estrogen, which can be estrogen dominance. But in the second half of your cycle, what us as naturopathic doctors know more about is estrogen dominance in relation to progesterone deficiency. So you could have normal levels of estrogen, normal technically, for the reference ranges. But if you have too low of progesterone production, then even with that normal estrogen range, it could become estrogen dominance.
Right.
Does that make sense? I don't know if I explained that well for you, but you can get it.
Yeah, no, definitely. Essentially, all you're really saying is that and during the second half of your cycle, your progesterone level should be higher, but if it's low and your estrogen level is still normal, you're going to present as a more estrogen dominant picture.
That's exactly what I was trying to say. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. No,
And
that's so fine.
We see this so often in today's culture, I feel like, because there's so many ways that can cause estrogen levels to be elevated.
Yeah. That was actually going to be my next question. Like, what are
we're on the
reasons
same
for this?
page.
Yes.
Yeah, oral contraceptives, like we talked about, can be a source of your body's estrogen levels. And even though it's a very small amount of estrogen, they say if your liver is not detoxifying that estrogen properly or sufficiently, then it can build up and that can cause estrogen dominance. I mean, there's also environmental exposures. We know about phthalates from plastics and BPA. And so those things contain what we call xenoestrogens. So estrogens that are not, the body's producing them and they're not very good for the body.
They're foreign.
Um,
They're foreign estrogens.
Foreign estrogens, exactly. And then things like, your diet, lifestyle habits like smoking or alcohol, all of these things can affect estrogen levels in the body too.
Definitely. And I think it's interesting because whenever you were mentioning the symptoms too, it was like the symptoms that you talked about that represent estrogen dominance are also the same symptoms that a lot of times birth control is prescribed for. So it's fascinating to see that connection, I guess, like, right? Because it's very similar. So whenever we're experiencing these symptoms, maybe maybe we shouldn't just go straight for the birth control, unless of course it's to prevent pregnancy, then we could have other conversations. But if we're having these symptoms, then maybe it is some level of estrogen dominance, right?
Right, definitely. And there's so many things that can be done apart from estrogen. I mean,
Oh,
giving a birth control pill.
yeah, definitely. And I mean, I can even personally attest to how I used to experience PMS symptoms regularly, and I almost never do now. I feel like I know when I do, if I had a little too much sugar or something, I was bad with my diet, then I almost always will experience a little bit of cramping, but otherwise I never do.
Yeah, that is
So
awesome to hear. That's so great.
I know, yeah. And so, and I'm very passionate, just like you are, about spreading this awareness that this isn't something that we have to just deal with every month. Like, it's
Yeah,
not. We don't need to suffer.
definitely.
I know. Okay. All right. So before we move on to the rapid fire questions, do you have anything else that you would like to share with my audience before we
Mm, well,
transition?
let me think. We went over a lot of great things.
Yeah, a
I
lot.
guess, I mean, maybe just talking about a little bit more about, where naturopathic medicine fits in with
Yeah.
talking about all these cycles too, because we talked a lot about how oral contraceptives or birth control can, apart from being for birth control, can successfully take care of a lot of these symptoms. But where naturopathic medicine really shines is in this realm, working on getting to the root cause and balancing these hormones so that you don't have to experience these symptoms. Like you were saying for yourself, you used to have PMS symptoms, but you've done work to
Right.
help balance your hormones, and look at that. Now you just have a period each month, and it's not controlling your whole week, if
Right.
you're having 5 days of a period. I think some of the best things, I mean, you can probably recommend these same things, but like liver support is a great thing to really work on. I used to have horrible acne too, up until, I don't know, October of last year, when I decided to get off of Proactive and really dive into why my body was still producing or causing me to have acne at this age. So,
Mhm.
and it turned out I needed some liver support. So, and it's been great ever since.
Yeah, that's amazing. And yeah, and I think that was a good point too that I forgot to reiterate, but our hormones are processed through our liver. This is why liver support is so important. And this is why it's so important that we take care of our liver. I feel like it's one of the most underrated organs, because of how much work it really does, right? And so it's
Mhm.
good. And I mean, we talk about this again. Naturopathic doctors are constantly working on supporting the liver in terms of the detoxification pathways, helping it get rid of these xenoestrogens that no matter how much we try, we're almost always still going to be exposed to them in some way in our world today,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So that's why using things like exercise to help detox as
Yes.
well, food as medicine. I mean, we didn't even, there's so much more we can
Yeah.
talk about from naturopathic standpoint of how to balance hormones. And
Right.
it's really awesome that, we can use something like birth control as a tool if a woman needs it. But if that is not, her main goal is not to prevent having a baby, then there's so much more that we can do as well.
Exactly. I love that. Thank you. Okay. All right, so moving on to the rapid fire questions. I call them rapid fire just because there's multiple questions and I'll ask them quickly. However, you don't need to respond rapidly. You can take your time responding, as much time as you need. Okay,
Okay.
so the first question is, what does Mahan Health mean to you? So we talked a little bit about how Mahan means great. So what does Mahan or great health mean to you personally?
Great health. I think to me, that just means having energy every day, being motivated to do everything I want to do, having a clear mind to execute those things. I mean, having clear skin, minimal PMS symptoms, like you're talking about, I think that's huge. Is as it's like it was a goal of mine to every month not have that bad of PMS symptoms, because that means you're doing something right with your hormones, and it's just another day. So I think a combination of all those things is
Yeah,
what Mahan Health means to me.
yeah, just like feeling great, like
Yeah.
actually feeling great.
And
Love it.
being able to like conquer the world like we talked about.
Yes. Yes. Being able to like live your life, live the life that you desire. I love it.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So then the next two questions, they could be related, but they don't have to be. It's completely up to you. Is what was the most difficult health change for you to make personally, and what are you still working
Most difficult health change for me to make. Probably eating more vegetables.
on?
Because
Yeah.
like I said, I was never someone that had, any digestive issues or any big health issue when I was growing up. I mean, I played soccer 5 times a week and I ate a lot of muffins, to be honest. So switching that diet when I stopped playing soccer to something more nutritious was not something I was used to either. There was 18 years where I didn't have to focus on eating vegetables. So rethinking, nutrition and what is nutritive to my body, what's really going to help support something like my liver or give me clearer skin, is still today something that I'm working on. But I mean, it took me 10 years to get to the point where I love vegetables now.
Yeah. Great. And now you have some really delicious recipes and things that you make too.
Thank you. Yes.
That's great. Okay.
I think,
So yeah,
oh,
sorry, go on.
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, would that be the same, or would that be something that you're still working on, or is there something else that you're currently working on?
I say I would feel like it's an everyday, choice to focus on eating vegetables as opposed to muffins. But I think I got that one pretty much down. I feel good when I eat vegetables now. But something I think I'm still working on is, let's see, I would say drinking more water. I am someone that does not drink enough water for
Mhm.
sure. And then eliminating gluten, which is so hard for me because as a naturopathic doctor, I know first, I know a lot about how inflammatory it is to the body, but when I eat it myself, I don't feel any of those symptoms. So it's hard for me to have that immediate repercussion from eating something glutinous. So I think that's something I'm still working on. And again, it's an everyday choice. It's an every meal choice. So water and less gluten.
Yes. I actually had a post on short-term suffering for long-term wellness. And so it's like you said, it's an everyday choice. I mean, even just today, I saw this delicious ice cream place and I was like, I really want ice cream right now. And then I was like, nope, I don't need it. And so I made that choice today not to get that ice cream, right?
Yeah, and maybe tomorrow you will, but
Yeah,
every single
every
time
day
is a
is
choice.
different. Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Okay. All right. So the last question I have is, if you could have any commercial, like a PSA announcement on health, what would it be about and why? The main reason why I asked this question is because, you know how many pharmaceutical commercials there are out there, junk food commercials. They've taken over the world, and they have so much power and money. And so I think that if all of us who are promoting true healthcare, if we were able to have commercials, what would it be like? What kind of world would that be like? So what would be your commercial?
Yeah. That's a deep question. I feel like it's kind of along the lines that you're talking about yourself, just like the idea of healthcare. So I feel like people are really starting to get involved in their own health, and they're looking for alternative treatments to antibiotics or immunosuppressant drugs, and they really want an alternative route and something that gives them their health back. But there's still so many people that don't know about that. So teaching them, the difference between healthcare and sick care. Sick care is waiting till you have some type of disease or illness and then treating it, as opposed to naturopathic medicine, where we really focus on preventing that disease and eliminating it if you have it, not just suppressing it, which is what a lot of drugs can do. And then I think the difference between naturopathic doctors and medical doctors, because a lot of people think that maybe we're stepping on their toes or we're inferior to them, but we're not. Our training is very in depth, and we're just different doctors. There's a podiatrist versus a heart surgeon. They are completely different doctors, and we are just different doctors than them. If you broke your arm, should not come to me. I cannot put it in a cast and fix it. Yes, I am not that type of doctor. But if you have something like hormone imbalances that's causing you to have low energy every day, and Western medicine wants to prescribe an antidepressant, well, let's look a little deeper into what can be causing that. So I just educating people on other forms of healthcare that are out there.
Yes, I love that. And for those of you who are listening right now, and if you haven't yet, make sure to go back to that second episode. And that's all about naturopathic medicine. It's about how rigorous our training is, what we actually do, our legislation process literally goes into all of the details of naturopathic medicine with Dr. McMath. So make sure you go and listen to that if you have not yet, because it's pretty much essentially what you're saying about bringing that awareness to what we really do. I go more in depth than, because usually we don't get much time to talk about it. We have like our 2-minute elevator pitch, right? And that's all we get. But that's what that podcast episode is all about, going fully into detail on what exactly it is that we do and who we are and why we are.
Another strong woman doctor, Dr. McMath. So listen to that one.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Where can people find you? They're looking for you.
Yeah, if you want to find me, my clinic, Pure Health, has an Instagram, Pure Health Medicine. So that's Pure and then Health Medicine. Or I have a personal doctor Instagram. It's Dr. Dr. my last name, Rodriguez, RODRIGUEZ, and then the letters ND as naturopathic doctor behind it.
And we'll definitely have all this in the show notes too.
Yeah, definitely. People are and then our website, purehealthmedicine.com, and you can always schedule a 15-minute consult with me on there. And then some upcoming events will be in San Diego soon, because we just opened a second clinic. Our original clinic is in Palm Springs, but we just opened a clinic in Encinitas. So we'll be at the Shape Up social event, as well as the Madonna Beach Run in Encinitas.
Awesome. That's exciting. So if you're in the San Diego area, make sure to go check those out and go meet Dr. Rodriguez and her team, because you won't regret it. It'll be fun.
So fun. We'll be doing some demos, so it'll be fun.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, and I can't wait to have you back again.
All right. Thank you for having me.
I hope you all enjoyed that episode. I'll have those events and Dr. Rodriguez's information in the show notes, so make sure to check that out. But that's all I got for you all today. Wishing you all Mahan or great health and happiness, and I'll see you next time.